Hi, my name is Nadia DiGelinardo. I'm the music supervisor for PIPPIN. And at our cast album session, I had the chance to sit down with Charlie Alterman, our music director, and Stephen Schwartz, our composer, and talk about the score. I hope you enjoy it.
Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
Well, look at Charlie too.
Stephen. No.
So how's this going for you so far?
It's going okay. You know, this is always
Just okay.
Just okay?
No, I think
Charlie,
I'll leave and you can
okay.
actually talk about how I'm doing.
no, everybody's doing good. It sounds good.
It does.
It's just always intense.
It's intense, and now how are we going to be for the rest of today? Are we finishing everything that we're setting out to do?
I think so.
do we have
I think
left?
so. Well, we have a little extra time.
We have like 5.
It turns out we have extra time because we're recording longer.
For the record, we have some extra time.
Yeah, so we have
Unheard of.
You know, my background was recording before I started doing theater, and so, you know, I'd learned about tracking things and that you do the tracks and then you do the vocals and then you do the backup vocals.
And then you can focus. Like today I feel really, it's nice to just focus on what the band's doing.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
not have to worry that you
hear
missed
every
something.
little detail that you might miss if you're thinking about the overall feel and the vocals.
Exactly.
You know.
On the first one, what were like the albums on your radar sort of in that moment of like, these are the pop albums that I'm listening to?
Motown. A lot of Motown.
It was on Motown, wasn't it? The original
it was on
album?
Motown, and
It's like the only cast album ever, maybe.
Yeah,
right?
I think
It's
so.
incredible. I also think
and all the
that they should have some
singer-songwriter
Pippin songs
things,
in
you
Motown,
know,
but that's another story.
like, you know, we'd get to something and we would say, these drums, they need to sound like Elton John's drums.
Like a
or
specific
this
reference
guitar,
like
this needs to sound like James Taylor's guitar, you know.
Were those actually references that you were thinking of
Absolutely,
at the time?
yeah, totally.
Yeah, that's great.
Piano and drum sound, particularly because I felt that Gus Dudgeon, who engineered the early Elton John recordings, had created a drum sound that I'd never heard before, a way of doing drums. So we tried to capture that.
That's
and
great.
you know, then the way James did guitar, you know, it was a wonderful sound for acoustic guitar, and so on. And then, you know, I worked with Phil Ramone on the original album, so that was, you know, really good. The only thing that I remember, though, is that, you know, we were recording on, I think it was 16 tracks by then, and it's 2-inch tape. So if you ever had to edit anything together, you literally had to cut the tape, which was always incredibly nerve-wracking. And the way you'd find this, the place was that Phil would go over to this giant recording machine with these 2 huge spools, and the sound would be on, and he'd go like, you know, and find the exact spot, and then we'd be very, very nervous. And he would take the splice of the
That's how I learned audio
and then he'd put it together.
In college.
Yeah, it was so nerve-wracking.
I feel like they still talk
And then,
about it.
and then there were no computer mix boards, so no, we must have been more than 16 track. We must have been up to 24 or something by then. All I know is that it took 6 hands to do it, because it was Phil and the whoever the recording technician was, sort of the assistant, and me. And what you would do was you'd have a thing like this, but with grease pencil you would like mark the different places you needed the different levels, and then you were going like this the whole mix.
Why are you making it seem like that's not what we're doing now? Exactly. That's like how hard we're working.
Right, exactly. And then if you got it wrong, you had to do the whole mix again.
No, that's terrible.
if you got one move wrong, or you had to edit, you know, you had to splice it.
So how long were you in the studio doing that album? Actually recording?
Well, it just took a long time. It was the one that I most remember was that Morning Glow was 52 mixes.
Oh my God.
And we used mix 48.
First of all, that you remember that.
Yeah. Well, who would forget?
52 tapes.
And Phil was a little bit crazy, you know, and so obsessive. So between the two of us. And then the other thing was that in those days I wore just plain old hard contact lenses, and my eyes would dry out, and then it would be so painful it would feel like big stab. So that was not a good thing. Yeah.
So it was the Motown Connection. Why? Remember we found the Jackson 5 corner.
Yeah. Well, that was the deal. The deal with Motown was there had to be 3 covers that they would release on Motown.
And
so Michael Jackson
did they set that up in advance, like before you recorded the album?
It wasn't necessarily who. No, we didn't know who it was going to be, but they had to be. They couldn't be like some,
And were you involved in like the Jackson 5 covers?
Not at all. Not at all.
But that must
Is it so
I mean,
they can't hear it on the radio?
Well, you mean with the wrong lyrics when they came out and it's like, oh, they sang the wrong lyrics.
That's what you're concerned with.
I know, and then
Michael
everybody
Jackson
sings
is
that wrong
singing
lyric
Corona's
now.
Wait, which one?
Michael Jackson did like cats fit in the windowsill, children sit in the show.
In the show!
Which is an interesting Freudian slip if you think about it.
Sit in the show.
And also
poor Michael with his childhood.
I know, exactly. He had no
childhood.
childhood. He was sitting in the show.
You might sit out a show. How do you sit in a show?
I don't know. But the problem is that now everybody...
It's like getting on a
people
plane.
still do it wrong.
That's amazing.
And when we're in the theater doing the show, because I remember being at auditions with you, and someone sang maybe Corner of the Sky, and I just turned to you and I was like, it's weird that like this song didn't exist, and then you wrote it, and now it exists. And I just always think about that with songs that I love. And do you ever think of it now when you're watching like Magic to Do starts, and you just think, well, I wrote that song?
No, I think I do the opposite. I was like, how did I do that? Where did that come from? Oh no!
Was that a dream?
I know.
Because it's so iconic now. It's the coolest thing to me, which is the craziest and most amazing thing, is when we start the show and I play that piano riff and it gets
that's so much
cheers
fun. That's so much
every
fun,
night.
Yeah.
I'm like,
it's really fun.
I'm waiting for that. Yeah.
Well, we're trying to do that same sort of moment on the CD. That's what we want to do that so that like then when it comes in, people have that response. Cool. They're like, oh, I remember that. Yeah.
And I also want to hear your thoughts on the singing of the score now. It's interesting. I mean, I feel
no comparison. We have so much better singers.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, dancers can sing now, and Pippin was pre a chorus line, and it was really a chorus line that changed things. Where from that point on, if you were a dancer, you also had to be able to sing. Oh, wow. They could kind of sing, but not really. I had to hire studio singers.
Right.
I hired 3 studio singers.
So did you even get to audition the dancers vocally, or they were just hired, and then if they could do
kind
it,
of that was
if they couldn't live with it?
Kind of, yeah, because Bob wanted the dancers he wanted, and so I felt, musically it really suffered a bit.
Yeah. And you also changed things even in the orchestrations for the album.
Yeah,
right?
Well, I felt the original orchestrations, which Ralph Burns did, and he was a great orchestrator. And when he wrote for a big orchestra, the ballads were, I thought, great.
Yeah.
But he was a very kind of big band, Broadway orchestrator, and so
like pop guy.
The pop stuff felt sort of didn't really feel pop.
Right.
It felt sort of like ersatz pop,
brass,
etc. And so when we got into the recording studio, because you don't have to deliver the same amount of volume with number of instruments in a recording studio, because you can just turn up a guitar track or turn up a keyboard track. So I circled a lot of the parts and just said tacit, brass tacit from here to here and from there to there and so on and I feel like in these arrangements, well, first of all, of course, we're dealing with a smaller band, but Larry is intrinsically a pop arranger. He understands pop style.
But still keeping it really orchestral, too. I just feel like he's achieved this great balance. I know, it's very cool.
But it still feels like a pop band
rhythm
with sweetening. A rhythm section with sweetening, as opposed to this sort of, big band that's kind of trying to imitate pop but doesn't entirely know what it is.
Yeah, and we didn't have to work too hard to even make the sound of the singing more pop or contemporary, just because I feel like with Matthew and Bettina, we just got like contemporary
that's the whole
voices.
Ben was a very good singer originally. And Johnny actually is a pretty Johnny is, everybody sort of knocked Johnny because he didn't have the biggest voice in the world, but when I went back and listened to the original cast album, in preparation for doing this album, I realized Johnny sang pretty well.
Yeah. But he was almost like contemporary literally for the time, and Matthew has a very like 2013 sounding radio voice.
But Matthew's such a great singer.
Yeah.
Plus we have, Charlotte is a better singer than Leland was, and obviously, and Rachel is obviously.
Fantastic.
I mean, Jill Clayburgh was not really a singer. Again, she could carry a tune well enough.
Yeah.
But Rachel's a real singer.
Yeah.
And then we have we just have a better, because the dancers in our show, sing better
Yeah,
than
they're
dancers
very good.
used to
They're
sing.
really good.
Yeah, so it's just
Total
better,
triple threats.
you know, better voices to work from.
Yep. And
I'm intrigued by all the stuff that you tacited out when you did the original cast album, but that stayed in the show at the Imperial, right? It was just for the album that you cut it.
Yeah.
Because
but no one remembers.
I feel like there's so many people like me who didn't see the original and know that cast album so well. It's like in my mind, that's what it sounded like every night at the Imperial.
That's why you have to get it right on the cast album, because that becomes people's memory of the show.
Completely.
You know, that's why I'm.
And how do you feel about some of the circusy stuff that we're throwing in?
I love it. I really, really like it, and I'm so happy that for this album, you know, we're recording some of that music and more of the dance music.
Yeah.
You know, which I really like. So I mean, again, the original album in those days, you had to get it on vinyl, and that was
huge time limitation, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So you had to do all these things technically to compress the sound as you got closer and closer to the middle of the disc. You had to compress the sound, or the grooves would be, I don't know exactly technically what happened, but it would skip.
Hold the needle,
It wouldn't hold the needle. So you had to compress the sound. So we had to really compress. That was probably one of the reasons for 52 mixes of Morning Glow, because I think it was the end of on the first side, and we had to compress it so much. And then I had to actually slightly speed up. I had to use a Varispeed, whatever was called a VSO machine, and slightly had to speed up Spread a Little Sunshine.
Wow.
In order, and Leland Palmer, who sang it originally, was quite annoyed about it, but I mean, it was either that or
a little chipmunky.
A little teeny bit. I mean, listen, I listened to it recently, and I thought it sounded good, and I thought she sounded good, but I understand that, you know, there she is on the original cast album, sounding just a little teeny chipmunky to her own ears.
And did it actually change the pitch of it? Like, did it
a little teeny
bump it
bit
into another key, or it just made it like a sharper version of the key?
But I mean, we couldn't get it on the album otherwise.
That's amazing. I never knew all of that.
Yeah. So it's so nice now that you don't have to worry about it.
Do you think you would have recorded more of the dance stuff from the original if there was space? Or was it
probably.
Kind of like making it a pop album?
Well, that was the other thing. You know, I had come off doing the Godspell album, the original cast album for Godspell, and was really determined with that one to at least try to make it a crossover album.
Absolutely.
Not a cast album, but an album that could actually chart. And that succeeded. So when we went into Pippin, you know, I had somewhat of that goal as well, and it did succeed. I mean, it was not as big a, you know, we didn't get as high on the charts as the Godspell album did. That, you know, Godspell
in terms of the crossout,
but it did pretty well. Yeah, it got up there.
And did you get involved in the dance music on that original?
The only dance music, the dance music is by Johnny Berkman, who worked with Bob Fosse very closely. And I like the dance music a lot. The only dance music that I actually wrote was what we call the Manson Trio. The thing in Glory, because it didn't really have much of a tune. You know, it had that feel because Bob liked.
Well, so there had been like an idea.
There was an idea. I think there was choreography actually.
Okay, got it.
And then you know, Bob used he would use records that he liked as models for the sort of the tempo and the feel. So that was based on Let the Good Times Roll, which he then used again for the opening of Chicago. So it's exactly the same. If you listen to the opening of Chicago and you listen to the Manson Trio, it's exactly the same for a while.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
But we came first,
but
so it's okay.
First, and I feel like people maybe don't know.
There's a whole thing I've always wanted to ask you about, because when I was a little kid obsessed with Pippin, I was at like my local Sam Ash, and I was like, what is this? A piece of music from Pippin that I don't know, that I think was only published for a hot minute, that was like the Manson Trio with lyrics.
Well,
a whole, like,
Ben Vereen became a star out of the original Pippin, and he recorded a solo album. And maybe on Motown as a matter of fact, and whoever it was, the producer came to me and said, Ben has become famous for this piece of music because he's dancing in the commercial, but of course it has no words. Could you write words for this? So those words were written just for Ben to do on his album. And they have nothing whatsoever to do. It's called like The Good Time Ladies Rag.
The Good Time Ladies Rag.
And it's sort of, you know, about coochie ladies in New Orleans or something. Amazing. I mean, it has nothing whatsoever
to do with
Did you have to,
like, how did you come up with those lyrics? Like, did they
I don't know, I just was like, well, what is... I just was like, well, what does this music sound like? And it sort of sounded like, you know, the red light district in New Orleans to me, at least on the day that I thought of it. So I wrote a song about that.
Amazing.
So cool.
So cool.
Are you trying?
Are we like over?
We're wrapping it up.
Let's do it. All right.
Wrap it up.
What's your favorite musical moment?
Oh,
my favorite
Schwartz,
musical
what is your
moment in the show,
favorite
I could actually answer that because it came by.
It came up today.
In Morning Glow, there is a
I know.
moment where the band drops out and the chorus just sings a cappella with this
And
amazing,
the phantoms
and it's amazing power chords, and it's just my favorite musical moment in the whole show.
And that happened for this, right? It was that one day in rehearsal where you were like, let's drop
Yeah. No, I mean that's not in the original.
Yeah.
That's just for this.
Very cool. Sounds
You
great.
hear those harmonies so
I just love it.
Stephen Schwartz, thank you for speaking with us today. It's been really a pleasure.
This was painless.
And back to work!
All right, let's go do it. Let's finish this album.
Should we do Right Track first?
Yeah, let's do that.
Let's do something fun.